everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. I'm super excited to be talking with my new best friend, Lyn Wineman, because she's a branding goddess, and branding's one of my favorite topics of all time. President and Chief Strategist of KidGlove. Hey, welcome.
Hey, Julia, if I knew you were going to introduce me as a branding goddess, I would have worn my tiara, but it's at the cleaners today.
Oh my God. Well, I had to park my broom outside the office, so I'm just saying.
Fantastic. See, we are kindred spirits. I could just tell from the moment we first started talking.
It's so true. Well, untangling nonprofit branding. Wow.
There's a lot there, a lot packed into that topic.
There's a lot here. And I have to say, Lyn, we were chatting about this in the green room. Maybe now more than ever, right at this moment in history for nonprofits, a tremendous burden of branding, something that I think most organizations never anticipated. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation to have with you. You know, it's always interesting acknowledging the time I get to acknowledge our presenting sponsors, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Third Sector Company, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. These are the amazing folks that join us day in and day out. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. I'm flying solo today because, to be honest, I wanted our guest all to myself because I just love this topic. And I'm like, I'll be ding danged. I'm not going to share this topic with any one of my co-hosts because they're going to have comments and opinions. And I just want to get to it with Lyn Wineman. As I mentioned, Lyn is the president and chief strategist of KidGlove, KidGlove.com. Okay, what do you all do? Because I'm sure you're super busy.
And Julia, I have to start with "I'll be ding danged" is the quote of the day for sure. I love it. I love it. I love it. So Julia, KidGlove is a full service marketing, branding, and advertising agency, and we special in nonprofit work. So 70% of our clients are nonprofits, and we do everything from branding to marketing planning to digital campaigns to full campaigns to fundraising campaigns to websites. We can do the whole thing. And then beyond nonprofit marketing, we serve social impact and public health campaigns, and then purpose-driven for-profits as well.
Wow. So I love then having this conversation with you because you come to us with this wide knowledge base and getting to see what works for organizations and maybe what hasn't worked. And so this is a really cool opportunity for us to learn from you. I'm just thrilled. You're based in Nebraska, but I'm assuming you work all over the country?
We do work all over the country. It's kind of nice to be in the middle, but you know, we're finding right now we have a lot of interest from the coasts because where we are, we can actually work pretty affordably. I've got really nice people, you know, Nebraska nice is kind of a saying that we've got, but yeah, it's just been great to really, you know, in the pandemic, we started to really focus in on nonprofits, and building that expertise has given us the opportunity to work outside of our geographic region.
I love it. Well, let's get into this and start off with the notion that branding is more than a logo. And in the green room, we were chatting and you're like, you and I could just talk about this for hours.
For the whole time. We could.
So start us and level set us with this concept, because most people are going to associate branding with a logo and that's it.
Yeah, because sometimes I'll start to talk about branding and people will say, oh, we've already got a logo. We're not changing our logo. But the reality is you can do so much with your brand, whether or not you touch your logo. So we think of branding as a pyramid, and at the top of that pyramid is your name, because the name is kind of the pinnacle of your brand. But then right underneath that is actually the logo. But then underneath that, we like to think about your tagline, those 5 to 7 juicy words that represent you over and over again, kind of like Nike's Just Do It, right? But then even beyond your tagline is your messaging. So what are the key words and phrases you use over and over again? And then there's your visual identity. So all of those graphics that go around your logo to give you that consistent look and feel. And then the last rung on the pyramid for us is your marketing and your advertising. So how you use all of these components consistently to reach out to your audience. So the cool thing is that if you come to me and you say, hey, I want a refresh, or I need to take a look at my brand, but you're absolutely not changing our name, I would go, okay, then we just need to make sure the other elements in the pyramid are working that much harder for you. Or you might say, hey, we're absolutely not changing that logo because we've got 50 locations and it's on all those locations. So then say, hey, then let's take a look at everything else around it, because I can up-level your brand. We can up-level your brand by taking a look at all of those elements together.
Wow. I mean, okay, the show's done. We can sign off.
Let's just go.
I love that. I think the way you phrased that and the way you structured it verbally and visually, it makes it so clear, and it makes it so much more valuable to understand where everything is, and the brand promise. And we were chatting earlier, and we say this a lot on the nonprofit show, but there are 1.8 million registered nonprofits in the US.
That's a lot of nonprofits, right? A lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of confusion, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Gosh.
So, and you have to stand out, right? Your brand, a big part of what your brand does is it helps you stand out. And it's amazing to me, out of all of the whole universe of nonprofits, we have a lot of things that we like to do similarly. There's certain colors that nonprofits tend to rely on. There's certain shapes, there's certain words. And so how do you figure out in your universe, in your consideration set with your audience, how do you stand out in a way that resonates and represents you in a very special way?
So that leads me to the next question I have for you, because I agree with you, but I got to ask, why does the nonprofit sector struggle with brand and messaging? And why is this such a hardship? Money aside, it just seems like the philosophy, why is this?
I think it has, and you and I talked in the green room, so I know you've got feelings, we've all got feelings, but I feel like a lot of people that get into nonprofit leadership have gotten there because they love serving their cause, and their focus is so much on serving their cause that it feels a little bit outside of their comfort zone, maybe even a lot outside of their comfort zone, to really think about this thing called branding. So I think, first of all, it's just not part of their natural genius or skill set. I don't know, Julia, have you seen the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned in the green room, I've always thought this. I think for profit or nonprofit, I think people get bored. And they see every time they log onto their computer, or they walk through their office or whatever the heck, they look at their coffee mug, they see their logo, and they're like, oh God, I'm exhausted. I'm tired of that. Right. And so then they're like, change is good. We want to start something new. And they don't understand the implications of that. That's my opinion. But I think you're right. I've back in the day, I remember, Lyn, that it was perceived by a lot of boards and community leaders that if you marketed your nonprofit, that was not good. That was something that was kind of shady, and that we shouldn't spend money on marketing. And I feel, thank goodness, that has changed.
But Julia, we talk to a lot of boards on behalf of our clients or prospective clients. It always feels like there's one or two people that are still on that board that are the prove it to me people, right? The tell me how this is going to work, or why we should divert funds from your mission. But branding is one of very few things that can move the needle on everything you do, right? Once you have that strong brand in place, it can do so many things for you. It can make all of your communications easier and more effective. And once you have the brand in place, it doesn't cost any more to send a fundraising campaign with a great brand versus sending one that has a terrible brand, right? Or it doesn't cost any more to do a digital marketing campaign that is consistent and in your voice versus something that's completely different. And I think, Julia, what you said about boredom, we have a saying in our business, and it's not just for nonprofits, it's for everyone, that just about the time you're sick of something, like, oh, I can't see that logo on my coffee cup one more time.
Right.
That's just when your audience is starting to get it, There's all kinds of data right now that says it takes 7 to 17 touches for a message to sink in for your audience. That's a lot of touches. And so if you're inconsistent and all over the place, you're going to need more frequency versus less.
You mentioned a really interesting statistic about the success rate of fundraising when an organization has a strong brand. What does that number look like?
I recently saw this study from Nonprofit Pro, and it was that if you have a strong brand that you use consistently, it can lift your fundraising by as much as 23%, and in some cases more. And I think right now in this state and time, with a little bit of economic uncertainty, with questions around federal and state funding, I mean, who wouldn't want a 23% lift without more effort, right? And I think that's the key. It's getting you a better return on all of the things that you're doing, including your fundraising. But a strong brand can also help you with volunteers. For those of us that need to connect and fill our programs to get funding, it can help you connect with those you serve. It also can really help you in the employment space. There's a lot of data out there right now that shows people also want to work with organizations that have strong brands and brands that align with their personal belief system. And I think as nonprofits, you've got the leg up there in doing that.
I love that you brought that up, because I absolutely think that's something that we're missing when we're looking about employee retention and attraction. Definitely with younger markets, they're looking for that value.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. Well, you have an exciting new project, and I this is one of the reasons why we invited you on to the Nonprofit Show. You have a new book, you and your team, Simplify and Strengthening Your Brand, Understanding What That Can Look Like, Untangling Spaghetti. I think that is a fabulous name. Because who hasn't tried to do that, right?
Oh, yeah. And actually, so Julia, we at KidGlove, because we love nonprofit branding so much, we have put together this 8-step process that we know when we go through these 8 steps, we're helping that nonprofit cast a vision. We're collecting research. We're analyzing their peers and their consideration set. We're setting a brand archetype profile. We're getting together with them to develop strategy. We're doing all those 5 steps before we even start thinking about naming, messaging, visual identity. And then we have put together a launch plan for that brand. And so we've been doing this process for 15 years. And we finally said, you know what? It's time to give it away. And one of my favorite nonprofit leaders, her name is Barbara Bartles. She was the executive director of the Lincoln Community Foundation in my community. She always said, give it away. If you've got something worthwhile, give it away. And so, okay, we're not completely giving it away. It's going to be in a book. But the book really outlines the process, and it does it in an interesting way, because we tell the story of a nonprofit that is having some struggles, and we show that nonprofit and their leader, their team, their board going through this process together. It's kind of a simulator of actually doing it yourself. So that's kind of fun. And actually, Julia, I told you I could talk about this all day, but I said the book isn't free, and ultimately it won't be free, but we're launching the book next week on April 10th, and the book will be free for 3 days. So if any of your listeners are interested in getting a free download of that book from Amazon. They just need to go to kidglove.com/free book. And just give us your email, and we'll email you and let you know when that book is available for free.
I love it. I think this is great. And I love that you are allowing us behind the curtain to see what the process is.
Yeah.
Because I think that so many organizations, they come to the table, the leadership comes to the table with things that have impacted the organization well before they were ever there, right? And
Yes.
so you have to untangle things like, what were the founders thinking?
Yes.
What was society like if it's an older organization, right?
Oh, sometimes older organizations have the biggest challenge,
Yeah.
because if you've been around for 70 years, 100 years, then people believe they know your brand, they know your name, but chances are you've evolved, you've innovated, you have new programs, new leadership, and you have to do something to let people know that something new and exciting is happening. And there's nothing better than a new brand to say, we're modernizing, we're innovating, we're adapting. Yeah.
It's so interesting, Lynn. We had a guest on last week who leads an organization well over 100 years.
Oh, yeah.
And old. And we were talking, and she's like, yeah, 100 years ago in our community, women could not have checking accounts. They couldn't have bank accounts. They couldn't vote. And, they couldn't own property, all these things. And she's like, now look at where we are in society and how their organization has had to change. And so I love that you add that to the equation.
Absolutely.
Because that's reality for a lot of folks.
Absolutely, it is. I actually had this experience, Julia. For a short time, I was the CMO of a regional nonprofit, human-serving nonprofit. And I walked in and thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be the dream job. It's a great nonprofit. Everybody knows them. They're doing good work. But when I walked in, I found right away that people were confused. They weren't up to date with what was going on in the organization. And behind the scenes, the thing I didn't know is they were suffering. They weren't meeting their census numbers. They weren't meeting their fundraising numbers. And they were getting ready to open new programs. And I knew that I had to pivot them very quickly. And so I went straight to their brand, and we went through the same tools. Now they've been refined, but the same tools that we put into this process. So I know what it's like, feet on the ground, like boots on the ground, what it's like to have to move the needle. And I've seen it from all sides, how well a brand can work for you.
So let me ask you, in that case, do you who do you envelop into that process? Right?
Yeah.
Because, you have all these different voices. And in the nonprofit sector, you have a board who is the fiscal leader, fiscal responsible party, but they're not really boots on the ground. They're not in there front facing with clients or funders.
True.
But they're making decisions that a lot of times they're not qualified to work on.
Absolutely.
So how do you do this? Like, do you just get the media and the marketing comms folks in the room, or do you bring programming in? Like, what's your strategy for that?
Actually, I am so glad. That is the best question, Julia, because that's exactly what this process is meant to do. It's meant to get the right people involved at the right time in the process. So we have 3 tiers of people we like to work with. First of all, there's a project team, which usually includes an executive director or a CEO, a marketing person. Like, it's a small group of key people. And they're the people that are going to help us, like, along the way, cast the vision, make sure, everything gets facilitated. Then beyond that, we like to have a group of leaders, usually 10 to 12 people, which includes some people from the board, some people from the leadership team. What we want are those people that really care about the brand. Sometimes I'll even say, who's the biggest naysayer on your board? Who's the person that doesn't want this to happen?
Right.
Right? Because I want them to feel like their voice is heard. So And then in our survey process, we like to send surveys out to a variety of different audiences that have familiarity with the brand. So we typically send surveys to all employees, all donors, all partners, community leaders, volunteers. So we like to send survey the whole board, anybody who's not included in that middle group. So what we want is, before we develop the proposed brand, we want to get a lot of information in so that when we present the brand, everybody feels seen and heard, but their comments are coming more so in the beginning versus as a reaction to the actual creative strategy.
Right. Because I think in the creative process, when you ask people their opinions and then you're like, okay, but we already have a plan, it gets people really cranky.
It does get people cranky, and it gets people cranky, and it's hard because we're working with a team of people that are trained. My team is trained in what words and phrases evoke certain emotions, and what are the trauma informed colors, and what you need in a color palette. It's not just, hey, I don't like yellow and I do like blue, and I don't like this word, but I do like that word. It's all put together very strategically. So if we can hear people and get their input early on, it really then streamlines the process later on.
So we don't have a lot of time left, and I want to kind of move into this question, which I love asking folks, and it might be the toughest question of our time together. But that is, Lyn, how do we know when this is working?
Yeah.
Because we're in our bubble, and we're trying to serve our clients, serve our mission, work with funders, work with stakeholders. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
Absolutely.
And how do we know?
Absolutely. Julia, the first thing is, and I'm going to answer this on a couple of different levels. One is, how do you know if your current brand, like, how do you know where you are, what needs to be shaped up? I've actually developed a 7-question tool, and surprise, surprise, it's in the book. I've actually developed a 7-question tool that, what I have found, this is the actual tool I use when I'm working with a board of directors or a leadership team. If you go through these 7 questions, you're going to have a pretty good sense on what's the checkup of your current brand. So that's one thing to look at. 2 is, I fully believe when you've got the right strategic brand, you are going to have confidence in what you're presenting, what you're saying, what you're sharing. When people go to your website, that confidence then is going to give you the courage to reach out and make the connections you need to fulfill your mission, or to achieve your fundraising, to make that huge donor ask as part of your capital campaign. And so if you feel confidence, that is a big indicator as well. And then lastly, we like to say a strong nonprofit brand is going to help you boost recognition and recall. It's going to help you lift your fundraising. We know from studies as much as 23%. It's going to help you connect with your stakeholders and fill those programs. And last but not least, it's going to help you in the employment world by attracting the people, the talent that you need to fulfill your mission as well.
I love it. I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. And you think it's really smart because it kind of takes some of the emotion out and some of the sense of, we think we know. We had a really interesting, and this is a heavy question that's come in from a viewer. And our viewer asked, how can we authentically build a message that not only captures interest, but also fosters long-term, genuine relationships with both donors and the communities we serve? And I love this question because I think a lot of times we just focus on the donors and the fundraisers because we're so desperate for the money. We kind of forget about our clients that we serve, and how do we message to them? Great question.
It's a great question. Julia, you have a very smart audience, and we knew that before we started, right? So great question. And I think, once again, that's why there's 5 steps in this process before you even start thinking about the creative. I mean, the way you bridge the present to the future with authenticity is you have a visioning session with the people who know best what's moving forward. And then you do a survey with the people who know you well, but may not know that vision. And then you can compare and contrast the two, and you can say, oh, the vision, the leaders know the vision, but the audience doesn't. And so we've got a lot of work to pull those together. And then the tool we use called brand archetyping, it actually sets a personality profile for your brand. And that personality profile should stay consistent for a long time. And that personality profile helps you with consistency, but also authenticity. So if you've ever had somebody write something for you and it's technically correct, but it feels wrong, chances are the brand archetype is off, the personality is off. And if you want people to trust you, that personality has to feel very genuine and consistent. As a matter of fact, I like to say you should never have to say, trust us. You should never have to say we have a quality program, because then people are like, why should I trust you, right? But people should just feel. That's what a great brand does, is people should just feel like you are a quality program worthy of trust.
Right. You know, you said something there. It's very interesting. It's the old branding lesson. You can't be all things to all people. And in the nonprofit sector, it's, you know, sometimes we have to say, no, we can't do that, or that's a different group, or we don't have the expertise or whatever. And boy, you know, that's a personality issue, because I think in the nonprofit sector, we are filled with people who want to say yes.
Absolutely. We want to help people.
Yeah, right. And
we're opportunistic. Yeah, we're opportunistic. A new program comes along, there's a funding source, we want to do it. But honestly, a great brand should really help you set a North Star. I mean, a great brand combined with a great strategic plan, you should be able to pretty easily vet, oh yeah, this is in our wheelhouse, this is in our focus, this is not. Because you know, that's part of the untangling. It's easy to get tangled if you have too many programs or too many messages, or you're going in too many different directions.
Wow. Well, this has just been a great way to start a new week. We're starting a new month tomorrow. I just have so enjoyed this time. Lyn Wineman, President and Chief Strategist of KidGlove. Check out KidGlove, KidGlove.com. And you can learn more about Lyn and her team and the work that they do. And then definitely get yourself signed up for a free book. I've loved so many things that you've said today, Lyn. You've articulated them in such a calm and meaningful way that makes this process a lot less daunting.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Julia. Untangling brands is my favorite thing to do.
Well, we need that help. We need that help big time. So thank you so much. You know, something that we never have to untangle here is our relationship with our presenting sponsors. They are amazing. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Third Sector Company, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. These are the folks that join us day in and day out as we march towards our 1300th episode. And we just started our 6th year this last week, which is like hard to believe, because I certainly don't think I'm 6 years older, Lyn.
I love the legacy you have created, Julia. It's amazing.
Oh, Lord. Well, it's something, that's for sure. Really interesting conversation. And again, Lyn, thank you for being, as I like to say, on our team and supporting our sector. It's such an important issue, and it's something that is easily confounding and stressful, and you've really kind of brought it back to why we need to talk about this. So thank you so much.
Julia, thanks for having me. I do really appreciate it. I'm a fan of the show. I love to listen, so being on is really a treat.
Thank you. Well, you've been great. We're going to get you back on for sure, because I know we have a lot to talk about. You know, we end each and every episode with this message, and it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you back here tomorrow.